As I settled down to write my latest horror story for YouTube, my mind wandered through the dark and twisted paths of my imagination. And then, as if summoned from the depths of the abyss, the Goatman appeared. The Goatman was not like any monster I had ever imagined before. He was tall and muscular, with a thick coat of matted, black fur covering his entire body. His head was that of a goat, complete with twisted horns and glowing, yellow eyes that seemed to pierce my very soul. I knew that the Goatman was not just any ordinary creature. He was a being of pure evil, born from the darkest nightmares of humanity. And he was coming for me. I could feel his presence growing stronger with every passing moment, as he stalked me through the shadows of my own mind. I knew that I had to act quickly if I wanted to survive the night. I began to search frantically through my room, looking for anything that could help me fend off the Goatman. But my efforts were in vain, as I realized that he was already inside my head, controlling my every move. Suddenly, I felt a cold breeze blowing through the room, and I knew that the Goatman was near. I turned around slowly, dreading what I might see. And there he was, standing right in front of me, his massive frame towering over me like a nightmare come to life. I tried to run, but my legs felt like lead, and I could barely move. The Goatman closed in on me, his eyes blazing with a malevolent light that promised nothing but pain and terror. I felt his hot breath on my face as he leaned in to whisper in my ear. "I am the Goatman," he hissed. "And you belong to me now." I screamed, but no sound came out. I was trapped in his grasp, unable to break free from his iron grip. I knew that I was doomed, and that there was no escape from the horror that lay ahead. And then, just when all seemed lost, a bright light flooded the room, and the Goatman vanished into thin air. I collapsed to the ground, gasping for air, as I realized that I had been saved from certain death. As I sat there, trembling with fear and relief, I knew that I would never forget the terror of the Goatman. He was a monster unlike any other, a creature born of nightmares and darkness, a symbol of everything that we fear in the darkest recesses of our souls. Days went by, and I tried to put the terrifying encounter with the Goatman behind me. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike again. Every night, I lay awake in bed, listening to the creaks and groans of the old house, imagining that the Goatman was just outside my door, waiting to pounce. I knew that I couldn't go on like this forever. I had to face my fears head-on, and somehow find a way to defeat the Goatman once and for all. I began to research everything I could about the Goatman, scouring old books and internet forums for any information that might help me in my quest. And then, one day, I stumbled upon an ancient ritual that promised to banish the Goatman from our world forever. It was a dangerous and risky plan, but I knew that I had no other choice. I gathered all the materials I needed and set to work, reciting the ancient incantations that would summon the Goatman to me once again. And then, just as I had hoped, he appeared before me, his eyes burning with rage and hatred. But this time, I was ready for him. I recited the incantations with all the power and conviction I could muster, and the Goatman began to weaken, his form flickering and fading in and out of existence. And then, with one final burst of energy, I unleashed the full force of the ritual, and the Goatman let out a blood-curdling scream as he was banished back to the hellish realm from which he had come. I collapsed to the ground, exhausted and relieved, as the house fell silent around me. The Goatman was gone, and I knew that I had won. But even as I celebrated my victory, I couldn't help but wonder, was the Goatman truly gone for good, or was he simply biding his time, waiting for his next chance to strike? Only time would tell. As the days passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that the Goatman was still out there, lurking in the shadows. Every time I heard a strange noise, or caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of my eye, I would freeze in terror, wondering if the Goatman had returned. I knew that I couldn't live like this forever, constantly on edge and afraid. So I decided to take action once again, and try to find a way to permanently banish the Goatman from our world. I returned to my research, digging deeper into ancient texts and forgotten lore in search of a solution. And finally, after weeks of study, I found what I was looking for. It was a complex and dangerous ritual, one that required the sacrifice of a living being. But I knew that I had no other choice. If I wanted to be free of the Goatman once and for all, I had to be willing to make the ultimate sacrifice. I prepared for the ritual in secret, gathering the materials I needed and selecting my sacrifice. It was a young goat, one that I had raised from birth and grown to love. But I knew that it was a small price to pay for the safety of myself and those around me. I recited the incantations with all the power and conviction I could muster, and the Goatman appeared before me once again, his eyes blazing with fury. But this time, I was ready for him. I had prepared a special trap, one that would allow me to banish the Goatman back to his own realm forever. With a final burst of energy, I activated the trap, and the Goatman let out a blood-curdling scream as he was sucked back into the dark abyss from which he had come. I collapsed to the ground, exhausted but victorious. The Goatman was gone, and I knew that I had finally defeated him for good. But as I looked down at the lifeless body of the goat that lay at my feet, I couldn't help but wonder if the price I had paid was worth it. Had I become a monster in my quest to defeat the Goatman? Days turned into weeks, and the Goatman was still gone. The house was silent, and I slept soundly at night, no longer plagued by nightmares of the demonic creature lurking outside my door. But even as I tried to move on with my life, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The sacrifice I had made to banish the Goatman had left a stain on my soul, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something dark and terrible was still lurking within me. As time passed, my unease grew into a full-blown obsession. I became consumed with thoughts of the Goatman, constantly searching for any sign that he might be planning to return. I spent hours studying old texts and ancient lore, trying to find any clues that might help me understand the true nature of the Goatman and the realm from which he had come. And then, one day, I stumbled upon something that shook me to my core. It was a passage in an old grimoire, describing a powerful demon known as the Goat Lord, who ruled over a dark realm of fire and brimstone. I knew instantly that this was the creature I had been facing all along. The Goatman was merely a servant of the Goat Lord, sent to our world to sow chaos and destruction. With this new knowledge, I began to prepare for a final showdown with the Goat Lord. I spent weeks gathering the materials I needed for a powerful ritual, one that would allow me to cross over into the dark realm and confront the demon on his own turf. The ritual was long and complex, requiring all of my knowledge and skill to perform. But finally, after hours of chanting and incantations, a swirling vortex opened before me, leading directly into the realm of the Goat Lord. As I stepped through the portal, I was immediately enveloped in a suffocating cloud of smoke and ash. The ground beneath my feet shook with every step, and the air was thick with the stench of sulfur. But I pressed on, my determination unwavering. And finally, after what felt like hours of walking, I came face to face with the Goat Lord himself. He towered over me, his eyes blazing with hatred and malice. But I stood my ground, summoning all of my courage and strength to face him. We fought for what felt like hours, our battle raging across the blasted landscape of the Goat Lord's realm. Spells and incantations flew back and forth, and I could feel my strength beginning to wane. But just as I was about to fall, I remembered the sacrifice I had made to banish the Goatman. I summoned the memory of that moment, calling on the power and strength it had given me. With one final burst of energy, I unleashed all of my power at the Goat Lord, and he let out a blood-curdling scream as he was banished back to his own realm. As I emerged from the vortex, I was exhausted but victorious. The Goat Lord was gone, and I knew that I had finally defeated the source of all the evil that had plagued me for so long. But as I walked away from the portal, I couldn't help but feel a sense of sadness and loss. The journey had left its mark on me, and I knew that I would never be the same again. But as I looked up at the sky, I saw that the sun was beginning to rise. A new day was dawning, and with it, a new beginning. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of hope and possibility. The Goatman and the Goat Lord were gone, and I was free to move forward with my life. Months passed, and life started to feel normal again. I went back to my job, hung out with my friends, and tried to forget about the horrors I had faced. But despite my best efforts, the memories of the Goatman and the Goat Lord still haunted me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their twisted, demonic faces staring back at me. One night, as I was lying in bed, I heard a strange sound coming from outside my window. At first, I thought it was just the wind, but then I heard it again, a low, guttural growl that sent shivers down my spine. I got out of bed and cautiously made my way to the window. When I peered outside, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Standing in the shadows was a figure that looked exactly like the Goatman. Its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and its fur seemed to ripple and shift as if it were alive. I froze, unsure of what to do. Had the Goatman returned, despite my efforts to banish him forever? The creature let out a haunting bleat, and then turned and disappeared into the darkness. For weeks after that, I saw the Goatman everywhere. He would appear in the corner of my eye, or in the reflections of mirrors and windows. Every time I turned around, he was there, watching me with those cold, dead eyes. I started to lose my mind. I stopped going to work, stopped seeing my friends. All I could do was sit in my house and wait for the Goatman to appear. And then, one night, I heard a knock at my door. I hesitated for a moment, but then slowly made my way to answer it. Standing on my doorstep was a young woman, no more than 20 years old. She was shaking and crying, and her clothes were torn and dirty. She begged me for help, saying that she had been attacked by a strange, demonic creature that had ripped her friends to shreds. I knew instantly that it was the Goatman. He had returned, and he was more powerful than ever. I tried to help the girl, but it was too late. She died in my arms, her last breaths consumed by fear and pain. From that moment on, I was consumed by a single-minded obsession to destroy the Goatman once and for all. I gathered all of the knowledge I had gained over the months since my first encounter with the Goatman. I studied every text, every ancient tome, every piece of lore that might hold the key to defeating him. And finally, I found it. A powerful ritual, passed down through generations of mystics and occultists, that promised to banish the Goatman back to his own realm forever. The ritual was long and complicated, requiring a number of rare and expensive ingredients. But I was determined to see it through, no matter what the cost. I performed the ritual in the dead of night, under the light of a full moon. I could feel the Goatman's power radiating all around me, but I refused to be intimidated. As the final incantations echoed through the night, I felt a sudden rush of energy. The air around me crackled with electricity, and I could see the Goatman writhing in pain. And then, in a blinding flash of light, he was gone. For a moment, I stood there, catching my breath and trying to make sense of what had just happened. And then, slowly but surely, I realized that the world around me had changed. The air was clear and pure, free of the smoky haze that had always hung around the Goatman. The trees rustled gently in the breeze, and the stars shone brightly in the sky. It was as if the Goatman had never existed at all. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The weight of the world lifted from my shoulders, and I knew that I had finally succeeded in banishing the monster that had haunted me for so long. But even as I celebrated my victory, I couldn't help but wonder, had I truly defeated the Goatman, or had I merely pushed him back into the shadows? I knew that the Goatman was a powerful and ancient being, with the ability to shift between worlds and dimensions. And I knew that he was not one to be underestimated. But for the time being, I pushed those thoughts aside. I had finally found peace, and I was determined to hold onto it for as long as I could. Weeks turned into months, and months turned into years. I moved on with my life, building a new career and forming new relationships. I tried my best to forget about the Goatman, but I knew that he would always be a part of me. And then, one night, as I was walking home from a late-night dinner with friends, I heard a sound that made my blood run cold. It was a low, guttural growl, coming from the darkness just beyond the streetlights. I froze, my heart racing as I scanned the shadows for any sign of the Goatman. But there was nothing there, just the sound of my own fear, echoing through the night. I laughed it off, telling myself that I was being paranoid. But deep down, I knew that the Goatman was still out there, waiting for his chance to strike. And I knew that, no matter how hard I tried, I would never truly be free of him. The Goatman was a part of me now, and he always would be.